So welcome to the first webinar of HR2IT's Next Practices webinar series on the topic of the emerging role of the HR business partner to IT. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Jessica Taylor and I'm excited to be the Executive Director for HR2IT. And from the poll it is clear we have a diverse group of HR and IT professionals, which is perfect for the topic that we're covering today. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with HR2IT, we're an exclusive community that's dedicated to the HR executive who supports the CIO and the IT leadership team. And we truly believe that the HR business partner really has the best opportunity to be one of the most vital members of the CIO's leadership team. And our mission is to inspire HR leaders to elevate IT talent and culture. Now, I'm delighted that we have people attending from all over the U.S., Latin America, Europe, and even India. And I'd like to give a special thank you to our founding members, our founding partners, and our founder for joining us today. So I have the great privilege to introduce our moderator for today's conversation. We have a lot to cover, so I'll get to that. He is a published author of many books, including Confessions of a Successful CIO and Unleashing the Power of IT. He's a contributor to CIO.com for a series titled CIO Whisperer, happens to be the CEO of Olet & Associates, a brand new grandfather, and the founder of HR2IT. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dan Roberts, our moderator for today's session.
Well, thank you so much, Jess, and good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, in the different time zones. And I am dialing in from Kona, the big island of Hawaii, where we're getting a pretty big hurricane here. So if I cut out, we've got like Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, like we all should in these things, right? So, but thanks, Jess. We're excited. This has been one of those dates on the calendar we've been looking forward to, given that we've got such an interesting group of people participating in different roles. We've got an amazing topic here for you. We spent a lot of time really thinking through how do we bring together world-class HR, world-class technology, and great things are going to happen in that regard. And this is serious business today, Jess, right? I mean, as we talked about this, the industry disruption cycle, less than 3 years now, right? So that means it takes less than 3 years for an entire industry to be disrupted today because of how fast things are moving with technology. And our companies today are dependent more than ever on technology and IT to transform and to really start delivering value at higher levels to become that strategic partner and what we call the innovative anticipator. So those are the things that are going to allow our companies to be disruptive, to defend against disruption. And folks, I've been at this for over 3 decades, and I can tell you with certainty that the best, fastest IT transformations that I've observed and studied over the decades, there's always, and I don't mean sometimes, there's always a strong HR presence, a strong HR business partner at that table. And so in our discussion today, and with our new HR to IT community, it's all about fostering the strategic partnership between HR and IT. It's about facilitating this notion of digital transformation. We're going to dive into that pretty heads down today. And also the whole notion of what's the workforce strategy today? How do we differentiate ourselves? So we're going to cover a lot of ground. And fortunately, joining me are 2 great friends and subject matter experts. So I want to kind of get them plugged in here. You know them both. Martha Heller is an author of her latest book, Be the Business, is just outstanding. She's had other great publications. I just saw this morning the Heller Report. If you don't subscribe to the Heller Report, you need to get that every Thursday morning. It's in your inbox with great news and stories, thought leadership. Martha is a CIO.com writer, so you've seen her writings there. She's also top influencer of CIOs, and many CIOs, Martha, tell me that you're the best search firm in the country. Just saying. So
They're right. That's proven. That's proven to be the case.
That's very statistical. Kevin will help us with those statistics. And Martha, my only instructions to your team this morning were decaf. Give her decaf. So all your energy. So good morning and welcome, Martha.
Thank you, Dan.
Awesome to have you here. And then joining her is my good friend Kevin Martin. So Kevin is the Chief Research Officer, CRO, for the Institute for Corporate Productivity, I4CP. He also is an acclaimed author and speaker. He's published over 100 studies and articles, and he's going to get into this whole notion of not just best practices, but I love where they come from, which is next practices around talent and HR. Kevin is also a top influencer on the HR side, and that's been proven out by multiple sources. You've seen his research in I4CP cited in Forbes, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, CNBC. I mean, their stuff is everywhere out there. And Kevin, with you, you're giving researchers a bad rap. I mean, you're not the stereotypical introverted, nerdy kind of guy. So welcome and glad to have you.
You know what? I'm so glad this is recorded because I'm going to play that back for my family and friends. Thank you, Dan.
Very good. And guys, if our day jobs don't work, I'm thinking back to the old days, The Odd Couple. Remember that show, The Odd Couple? I'm going to put you two guys. We're going to do a TV show, HR, technology come together. It's going to be perfect. I love it.
Excellent.
So for our audience, and welcome again, everybody. Again, we've got people from around the globe. This is a topic that's really hitting a nerve. We were blown away by the response. And our goals today, we are going to get into this notion of next practices. We're going to get into digital. We're going to get into workforce strategies. We're going to get into change leadership, digital fluency. I mean, all the buzzwords, and then we're going to kind of get through the hype and what all these mean. We're going to give some real-world examples. We're going to share some stories about companies. This is not an academic exercise today. This is going to be people are doing this stuff, and we're not going to talk about Amazon and Google because we know what they're doing, but we're going to talk about what we call old line, boring companies that are really pivoting and really driving their companies forward. So along with that, some great tools, some nuggets, takeaways, and a little energy along the way. So think we can do that, guys?
Sure.
Let's do it. Fun. Let's do it. All right, I'm going to start with you, Martha. I'm a big believer jumping in the deep end of the pool. So let's go right to this whole notion of digital transformation. Eye rolls are everywhere right now. I get it. People are kind of, it's I don't know if it's hype, if it's consultant speak, if it's fatigue or what it is, but let's talk about what that means from your vantage point and your travels. What is digital transformation, Martha?
Sure, and I've decided, Dan, I'm so often a moderator. I'm not a panelist as often, so what I'm going to do is be one of your worst panelists, just to get back at all those panelists over the years who steal the microphone, go off topic, don't let anybody else speak. So I'm just warning you, I'm going to try my hardest to be a challenging panelist for you. So just to keep you on your toes.
I expect nothing less, Martha. Go for it.
So when it comes to digital transformation, from my vantage point, executive committees can become confused. Is digital a function that requires resources? Is digital a set of technology solutions? Is it a P&L? Is it a strategy? Do we need a chief digital officer? If we do, what is that person's background and where do they report? So there's a lot of confusion around digital, but in a way, the answer to all of this is pretty simple. A CIO friend of mine once said, we don't need a digital strategy. We need a business strategy for a digital world. We're in a digital world, and I believe, let's all meet back here in 5 years, and I bet digital has started to make its way out of our lexicon. Digital is sort of a transitionary concept that we need because our world has changed so dramatically, we need a way to describe it. But I think digital is going to be as ubiquitous to the way we live and work as, I don't know, oxygen. We don't need a chief oxygen officer. And before long, I don't think we're going to need the concept of digital, but we need it now. So why don't we talk about what it is? One way to do that is to talk about what it is not. Digital is not doing what we've always done, but using technology to do it faster and cheaper. Digital is a full full-scale transformation of nearly every facet of our business. And I'm just going to round this out, Dan, with a couple of bullets on that.
Perfect.
One, we used to use technology to run our businesses. Now technology is our business. We used to sell a product. Now we sell data or connectivity or customer experience. We used to know our competitive landscape. Now our competitors are coming at us from all sorts of new places. As a company, we used to be all about manufacturing or supply chain or design or R&D, and now we are all about the customer. And the customer wants access on her phone, on her watch, through her voice, in her car, and I'm thinking next is just direct to brain, right? I don't even need a channel, just go right to my brain. So digital is a full-scale transformation of what our business does, how our business does it, and the way we need to think about our business. So I agree that there's a lot of confusion throughout companies about what digital is, and you find a lot of executive committees that are not on the same page about what digital is. But digital is it's turning our business on its side. To me, that's what a digital transformation is.
That's a great start, Martha. I appreciate that. I was on the phone last week interviewing Jim Swanson at Monsanto, and writing an article and with he and some of his people around their digital transformation. And we'll get into that later, but he was talking about they're going to go from selling bags of seeds to selling outcomes to farmers.
Right.
And that's all about, like you say, it's changing the business strategy. So great start. And Kevin, I want you to jump in. And as we do that, we're going to start a poll here too. So if everyone could kind of jump in and just be curious in your companies, what percentage, if we were to interview all of your employees in your companies right now, what percentage would be able to describe your company's digital strategy? Or I guess the way Martha, if I were to reword it the way Martha just said, your business strategy for a digital world. So as we're doing that, Kevin, you hang out a lot with some amazing chief human resource officers, board members, people in the chief learning space, and so forth. What's their take on this whole digital transformation notion?
Well, I want to first answer that by building off of, Dan, of something Martha shared. And, quote, it's a full-scale transformation of every facet of your business. My question to the audience here is, how many of your organizations understand the talent implications of the transformation that your organizations are going through? The reason I pose that question is because when we surveyed a large audience last year, we asked them what would be the 3 most valuable data-driven insights related to human capital or talent at your organizations, the 3 most valuable. And number 1, by a factor of 2, so 2/3 of respondents indicated it was the gap between what their organization needs in terms of skills and capabilities going forward to support the business strategy, to support to lead the organization through and after the transformation, let's say. And transformations have no finite date, as we all know anymore. But it's the gap between what they're going to need and what they currently have from a talent supply standpoint. And I think with that, if you consider that, and juxtapose it with this. So, as you mentioned, we have the good fortune at our firm of working with the chief HR officers and the HR leadership teams of fantastic and some not so fantastic organizations that want to become fantastic, let's say, around the world. And what we found very clearly is this, that a large portion, I would say probably half of the chief HR officers, one of the top priorities they outlined for us around this year was around transformation, saying, hey, here's what our businesses are going through. Digital transformation was mentioned by many of them, right? But there's all types of transformations taking place. But what happens is this, and this is where the CHRO's mindset is. It's as a result of these transformations, which are being dictated clearly by customer expectations, changes in markets, acceleration of technology, et cetera, right? But what that ipso facto does is that it mandates a shift in the organizational structure, right, to enable faster, better decision-making at the point of execution, as well as a shift in culture. You know, if the business is transforming to better equip itself to meet the customer, future-focused needs of customers or markets, right, and our strategy is evolving as a result of that, your culture needs to evolve to support that strategy. And where the CEOs in our member organizations that I've had a chance to talk with, where they immediately start thinking, when they think about the culture shift, is they immediately go to the mindset of their executive leaders. You know, do our leaders have the mindset and the capabilities to support the culture change that we're going to need? And then clearly there's multiple talent implications. And I would just throw out there, because I think this is something from the HR business partner to IT or HR business partner in general, they've got to be well aware of, is the talent implications are going to dictate, you know, from a build, buy, borrow scenario, divergent talent sources. You know, you've got to be able to have relations with, and you've got to have an employer brand that resonates with the talent you're going to need, which is coming from sources that are more than likely beyond where you've sourced from before. Do those people actually know who you are? And if they do they view your organization as an organization where they want to lend their talent? And so, you know, all of this has tremendous application and implications for HR and for the organization in general. But, you know, for the strategic HR business partner, I'm going to come full circle here. I think one of the most important things, any kind of transformation or digital transformation that the HR business partner, especially to IT, also needs to consider is going back to that data point I mentioned earlier. Do you really understand the gap? Do you know what are the capabilities and skills required? And are the roles shifting to support the business going forward? And what is the gap between what you need and what you have, and how are you going to go about filling that?
It's really fascinating, Kevin, especially as we're watching this poll here, right? And Martha, I want you to kind of maybe speak to that when Kevin talks about this gap. And we're going to come back to a lot of things you just talked about, Kevin, around that culture shift, the mindset, definitely the employer brand. Those are some big topics I want to dive into. But Martha, this poll, we're finding maybe some rationale as to why there's a gap out there. What do you see going on here?
Well, I mean, you know, it all starts from the top. And just to, you know, jump off of some of Kevin's remarks, don't bother looking for new skills. Don't bother thinking about the gaps in your talent if your executive committee doesn't have the right mindset. You're wasting your time. The way I look at it is, the mindset has to be there. This is not business as usual. You know, I mean, look, if you even think about the financial scaffolding of a business, when you move to SaaS models, you're moving from CapEx to OpEx. Well, EBITDA likes CapEx. EBITDA doesn't like OpEx. And so even the very financials of your business that you've been using to run your business, I don't know, 100 years, 150 years, for the first time in a century and a half, you actually have to change the finances of your company based on digital technologies. That is dramatic. And I was talking to a CIO of a large retail company who said that he's fighting a battle with his CFO over moving to SaaS models because the CFO doesn't want to switch from CapEx to OpEx. I mean, that's pretty significant when you think that that's going to get in the way of their digital transformation. So what I would say is this. The executive committee has to have the mindset that this is not business as usual, that the customer is at the center of everything, and that our business is changing. Once you've got that, you need a new organizational design that is not based on silos, that is not based on moats around our departments and moats around our businesses, one that is based on cross-functional, nimble teams with different kinds of accountabilities, different kinds of metrics, different kinds of goals. Once you got that, you may actually find you've got the talent already. You just needed the mindset and the organizational design to drive the right skills. So, we can say, oh, we need new skills in artificial intelligence. We need new skills in blockchain. We need new skills in agile development or whatever. But if your executive committee doesn't understand that the business has to show up to be agile and doesn't understand that the way you've measured success and you've drawn departmental lines, that all needs to change, your efforts to go bring in the skills are wasted. It's the mindset and the organizational design that matters the most. And from that, doesn't mean you don't have to be creative about, sourcing and about having a talent brand and all of that, but don't do any of that if you don't have the mindset and the org design in place.
Yeah, I'm going to build on, well, Dan, I'll build on that too. As you know, and something we haven't announced, well, I'll just announce it here because it's, we're just in the early stages, but a major research endeavor that we're going to be embarking on is culture. And this was a study that our chief HR officers and our membership asked us to pursue. And so we're going through the diligence, and I believe it's one that that you all, just like our agility research, you'll be promoting out to your audience here too. But it is incredibly clear to us that there is no discussion around culture change if the mindset of the executive team, the executive committee, is not completely wrapped around where it needs to go. And we were just from an example standpoint. And I know you had referenced, we'll just kind of filter in examples here, so I'll use this as an opportunity. I remember a few years ago, Choice Hotels, this is an organization, they had a new CEO who came in several years ago, and he came in after, I think there were 13 quarters in a row of record growth. And that CEO, his name was Steve Joyce. The reason I said was, he's still around. He's just with another firm now. after the transformation, a very successful transformation, he led that firm through. But Steve came in and said, listen, what got us here isn't going to get us there. And Steve knew that they had to move from a business model of basically being hotel operators to being an e-commerce type of play. And he partnered directly with their head of HR, and they immediately looked at the executives, and Steve was immediately targeted and said, it's got to start with our executive committee, and with our executive committee, we then got to go layers down. And over a multi-year period, they purposefully exited out about half of 400 VPs in their organization because they just could not get the mindset or did not have or even the desire to take on the mindset needed to propel the organization to take on the transformation that was required. And the organization made the shift, and it's been very, very successful since, but that's an example of what we're exactly talking about here.
Yeah, great stuff. And Kevin, when you make announcements on a webinar about a new study, you've got to come back to the same group and share those results later. So I'm just saying, just going to hold you to that. This is recorded.
Done. All right.
Okay, good. Martha, I'm looking at these, I don't know if everyone can see these poll results, and fascinating and not surprising. 85%, less than 25% of their employees understand their digital strategy. 12%, a little better, 25 to 50% of their people know their digital strategy. So, Martha, I'm thinking you and I know a lot of CIOs who are embarking upon digital fluency initiatives, digital leadership, digital fitness. They come in all kinds of different names, brands. I think the savvy ones realize these aren't IT initiatives. These are company-wide initiatives. I would say with this poll, we've got a big job ahead of us with these this education. What do you think?
Well, so when it comes to sort of, who's going to lead in digital, clearly what this means, when I look at these numbers, I think no one's leading in digital at these companies, because if the majority of your employees cannot articulate a company's digital strategy or business strategy for a digital world, it means there's a void in digital leadership at the company. So, what CIOs are asking, across industries is, when technology becomes the business in a way that it is now, what is the role of IT now? Where does IT stop and product engineering start? Where does IT stop and marketing start? What is IT's role in innovation? Who is IT's customer? And what does it mean to be a transformational IT leader in a digital world? So I've, put together a presentation that I've been giving to the IT leadership teams of CIOs who have asked me to come in and kind of, light the fire under their teams to get them to recognize their role in digital leadership. And here's what I'm saying to them. Number one, embrace your role as digital leader, IT. IT is the beating heart of the business. It touches everything. And if IT doesn't take a leadership role in digital, if IT does not believe that it is their responsibility to drive these poll numbers up so that a greater percentage of your employees understand their digital strategy, then you're not doing your job. And, sorry to be so stark in a friendly webinar, but your businesses will go under. Because there are so many companies that don't have legacy infrastructure, that were born in a digital world, that are coming out from the woodwork to be a new force of competition for you. So if the CIO and his or her, top people do not step into that digital leadership void and take it as their responsibility to drive these fairly dismal numbers up, your businesses are going to go under. That's number one. Do I need to say more, or is that enough? I'm saying more. More. Try to stop me.
That is not. Okay. That is not hype. That's the real deal, Martha.
No, that's the real deal. So just a couple more points. Also, recognize that digital is a team sport. It doesn't matter who's got the title of Chief Digital Officer, who's got digital on their business card. It has to be all about co-creation, and that's key, and we'll get to that later when we talk about HR's role in all of this. But it has to be co-creation. It has to be technologists coming together with other parts of the business to create digital strategies. It means mindset is the most important part of this transformation. And what it means to IT is, what I tell up-and-coming IT people is, systems is not your job. Yes, you are accountable for keeping systems up and running, but your real job is articulating digital strategies based on what you're seeing in the market to your executive colleagues. If you, as a CIO or as a VP of IT strategy or whatever, are not always putting in front of your colleagues the possibilities of your digital future, you are not doing your job. When IT people say, hey, it wasn't my fault that we didn't convert as many online visitors to customers as we wanted to, the systems were up, it means you're only doing half your job. You are accountable for converting online visitors to buyers in conjunction with your business partners. And if you don't take that as your accountability, to make sure that your customer engagement channels are as robust as they can be, and that your colleagues do not understand what your digital strategy is, then you're not doing your job. I believe that it is IT's responsibility to provide digital leadership to their companies. And when I look at those numbers, and how poor they are, I'm a little bit surprised, I will say, that they're so bad. But when I look at that, I look at the entire executive committee and say, what are you doing? And I look at the CIO and I say, why are you not stepping into that digital leadership void?
Yeah, so let's talk about what that looks like. So when it's good and when it's working, I'm going to share an example. And Martha and Kevin, if you think of any others, I'd love you to jump in after. I think of CarMax. CarMax is in an industry that we love to hate. It's used cars, right? And it's on a national scale. And Shamim Mohammed, CIO, Google CarMax digital transformation. And again, business that we love to hate. And they're in their second phase of their transformation journey, their digital transformation journey. They've completely orchestrated, changed the customer experience. You both have talked a lot about mindset. They have built a digital-first mindset in their company. If we had them represented in that poll, you would see them in that 75 to 100% range in terms of people knowing and locked into and focused on the big rocks of that transformation. Today, their Net Promoter Score, and if people aren't familiar with Net Promoter Score, Google it. That's a recognized measure of your external customer satisfaction? Would people recommend you to their friends? CarMax, used cars, Net Promoter Score higher than Amazon, higher than Apple. I mean, think about it. Think about that, all through their digital transformation. Kevin, Martha, do you guys have any examples that jump out to you, just quick stories that you might share in terms of when it's good, what it looks like from the end result?
Sorry, Kevin, I'm diving in. Nice try. I beat you to it. I'm going to, Dan, I'm just going to jump off what you said and stick with CarMax for a second, because I actually did a blog with Shamim just after they did this transformation, and I have a quote from him. Here's what he says. He says, because they called it moving to a product organization. We can call it digital transformation. They called it a product, and he said, transforming to a product organization is not an IT initiative. It's a cross-company priority, so that's key, right? IT has to play a leadership role, as Shamim did, but it's got to be across the executive committee. He said, for us, it required a total change in how we think and what we do. We called the transformation, quote, shocking the system. We removed cubes. We created collaborative spaces. We co-located staff so that IT sits with their product teams, with sales and marketing. And we created, and this is key, a new IT operating model based on cross-functional product teams. That allows us to focus on true business outcomes, not IT activity. So this wasn't a Skunks Works thing where somebody was, assigned some transformation initiative. This was an entire executive committee saying, all right, wake up. We've got to change what we do. So I'll just bring up one more, and that's Northwestern Mutual. So Northwestern Mutual is about a $14 billion insurance company, and, we'll see, right? The jury's out on how any of these digital transformations are going to do, at the end of the day. But they recognize they no longer can only go through agents to their customers. They need to go direct to customer. Well, that's a different business, direct to customer. So they did a complete transformation from the IT perspective. They went from 100% waterfall to 100% agile, which is a huge transformation. They completely dismantled IT so that IT just is a thin org that's focused on security, architecture, and infrastructure, and all other technology resources, all development resources are now embedded in the business. In fact, our HR friends on the phone today will enjoy this. The CTO of Northwestern Mutual now reports indirectly to the Chief People Officer. That's his direct reporting relationship because he's focused on worker productivity digital technologies and needs to be close to the action. So, we'll see, right, how Northwestern does it over the next couple of years. But in terms of really, doing something and changing, they have completely changed their organizational structure to have an organization that is focused on a direct-to-consumer business as opposed to one that's focused on agents. So, to me, that is a gutsy, all-in organizational move that they really had to do.
Martha, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. I want to dive a little deeper into this notion of agile, but I want to give Kevin a shot first. To any stories, any case studies come to mind, Kevin, that you can think of in your travels?
Yeah, well, a company that I love to cite because I've personally worked very closely with them, and I think that when you think about an organization that's gone through a massive transformation, not just themselves, but they're transforming the industry, and it's the ag company Land O'Lakes. Most of us know Land O'Lakes as a butter company, but here's some data points that might shock a lot of people here. So we're all familiar with this, that we anticipate by about the year 2050 that there'll be about a spike in global population by about 35%. So the population growth is supposed to get up to 9.6 billion people around the world. But did you know this, that they only estimate that the growth in cultivated land by 2050 is 5%. And compare that also with an expected outstrip in demand for water Oversupply is 40% just by the year 2030. That should scare all of us. But if you're an organization that's a supplier in the ag industry, what are you going to do about it? So their head of HR, Lauren Haringa, who is a incredibly strategic, just visionary guy and gets stuff done, it was very fortunate. Worked for CEO Chris Policinski, who is the same way, visionary, get stuff done. And they embarked on a massive transformation. But what they've done is, and part of this was they launched an entirely digital business they called Winfield United. But basically, they're now providing value-added insights. So go back to that HR business partner, right? The HR business partner, when you're strategic, you're providing value-added insights. And to leaders, hopefully, that have the mindset that accept those and are ready to drive different types of change. But this business is providing data-driven insights to farmers that allow them to understand, what type of fertilizer they should use, how much fertilizer they should use, how much water, when they should water, and it's allowing for much greater cultivation per acre. So that's great, but then you've got a challenge as an organization to say, geez, we're not just recruiting out of colleges anymore, people that want to be farmers. We're recruiting people who have to have a digital, not just mindset, but digital fluency, digital capabilities, and we need to be able to change these. And so this is where their organization started partnering with universities and other types of schools and outlets, and they started creating an employer brand with them to say, come here. This isn't the place where, it used to be the farmers of old, wear your overalls and plant some seeds or whatever. You're coming in as a scientist, as a data scientist. And you're providing strategic insights back to farmers who themselves are so data-driven anymore. So what I wanted to share is that's a story of an organization that started looking at a major problem and said, how do we need to get ahead of the curve? How do we also need to start looking at our talent sources and the roles? How are they going to morph within our organization to drive the value that's going to be required? And do we have the brand in order to, are we to attract the talent that we need? It's a great story. Yeah.
And Dan, if you don't mind, I'm just going to dive in. I actually did a blog, Kevin, with Mike McCree at Land O'Lakes. Mm-hmm. And in order to help drive the transformation that you're talking about, he completely reorganized IT. He broke IT down into 6 different P&Ls. With marketing plans, running as a business very differently from before. And that had a huge amount to do with their ability to drive that transformation. So when I think about HR's responsibility here, creating a business outcomes culture, which is what Mike did. He created no longer just his IT team focused on 3 nines and mean time to recovery and sort of traditional IT activity metrics. They all have business goals that align with the same business goals that the company's P&L leaders have. Well, designing compensation plans to turn an IT team into a business-focused organization, that is not easily done. And HR's ability to co-create new compensation plans, new performance plans with IT so that that mindset, that business outcomes mindset can really flourish in the IT organization, I think that's an incredibly important role for the folks on this call.
Boy, these are really great stories, and if you guys think about it, if you could send us, Martha, you mentioned a blog, Kevin, you've done some writing and research. If you can share some of that content with us, we'd be happy to push that out to our attendees today. So thanks for those stories. Hopefully we'll get to some more. Kevin, we're showing right now one of your slides. Martha talked a minute ago about Northwestern Mutual going to 100% Agile. You've done a lot of research on this, and I know you've got a lot behind it, but can you just share, I love this, the 3 A's of organizational agility. Can you kind of speak to those themes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these questions here, Dan, are ones that anyone should take back to their organization and ask. We have clearly found that there are, and I'll just speak very quickly to this, in order to anticipate the change that you need, organizations have got to do a much better job, and this is where a tremendous opportunity for the HR business partner resides, of being able to sense what changes are coming around the corner. These can be internal to the organization. Heck, I just spoke to this business unit leader. I'm working with my functional leader here, and we see where we're leading, where we've got to go in this regard. It's also external. What in the world is happening out there from a macro perspective, and what are the implications on us, right? And so it's about pulling up the head out of the sand on occasion and being able to get that sensing that needs to happen. The ability to adapt is completely reliant on that as well. And the adapt piece speaks a lot to, how clearly has the organization, when you're able to understand, hey, these are the changes out there, et cetera, how can we adapt to these? Well, have you been able to anticipate the different types of requirements from a talent perspective you're going to need, and how capable is your organization at capitalizing on that? And that speaks to the areas that I mentioned earlier. And I really emphasize the importance of really understanding where talent can come from. And then one of the biggest moves we see HR trying to get ahead of is the ability to move the work to the worker, not the worker to the work. And so that just means, thinking about talent anywhere and being able to reach that talent, right? And then the last one is act, and this one I think is really critical. This is all about disruption, and it's not necessarily about just disrupting the marketplace. If you can disrupt the marketplace, more power to you. But the real challenge here, I think, is how do we disrupt ourselves? And I'll go back to something that I hit upon earlier that Martha capitalized on as well, which is the mindset. You've got to disrupt the way organizations, especially at the top of the organization, think about things. This is the way things have been done around here, or we've tried that before, et cetera. You've got to come around from the opportunity to take calculated risks. And I think an important question that every organization needs to think about when they think of agility, because agility can be very nebulous, can be very big, and frankly, if done wrong or if it's done too big, it could actually destroy any type of move to be agile. I think one of the questions organizations need to ask is, agile where? Where does it make sense for us to pursue being more agile as an organization?
Yeah, good. I appreciate this, Kevin. This is research that we'll also push out, and I love your stuff. It's not fuzzy, nebulous, touchy-feely. There's real nuggets there. So you both are, and I want to thank you both, because our HR to IT community, this new community, we have a group of founding members, and we're going to show you those companies, and great thought leaders coming from these different companies. Also, you two are founding partners, so thank you both for helping us kind of shape the agenda. When we surveyed these companies, the HR business partners of these companies, they shared that the number 2 topic of most interest to them in their companies was digital transformation. You guys did a great job with that. Number 1 priority for them was around workforce strategy. And so someone tells me you guys might have a point of view on this. So Kevin, you want to start, and then Martha, I'd love to get your perspective on, and I know it's part of this new org design, new agile, new mindset, but talk to me about how do we get to a differentiated workforce strategy? What's this look like, Kevin?
Well, you know what? Thank you for showing this graphic. This is, I think oftentimes the term strategic workforce planning falls on deaf ears, especially to business leaders, because they're looking and going, oh my gosh, sounds like another HR initiative in that regard. And, right. and frankly, it's not, and it shouldn't be perceived that way. And so, what we like thinking about is, and we titled this Strategic Workforce Planning Reimagined, but frankly, what I'd encourage everyone, Dan, and you know this better than most, they should really be thinking about talent risk. and they should be thinking about what I tried to articulate early on, which is where are we going, what's going to be required of where we're going. Are there going to be changes in roles that are critical to our organization moving forward? Are there skills and capabilities that are required going forward? And this is all with consideration that mindset at the executive leadership role has changed. Because without that, this is pretty much a moot point in this regard. But for the HR business partner in particular, and IT plays a huge role in enabling this, from the ability to access the data, right, in this regard, to be able to look and say, with where we're going, where do we have the greatest risk? This model right here, we believe, really defines where that is. And what I would challenge people to consider is this, especially those who are HR business partners or are IT leaders who are hand in glove with their HR business partner. Ask yourself this question: how much of your time do you spend in operational capacity? So in operational capacity, you're thinking about things like headcount forecasting. And that helps run the business, which is great, and that's needed. Versus how much time you spent more tactically. And tactically would be things like staffing plans. What's our plan look like for the next 6 months to 12 months? And how do we staff up to meet that plan? Are we prepared in that regard? And that's basically helping to manage the business. But where there's real meat, where you're going to get the greatest return on investment, is around strategic level thinking and strategic level insights. These help lead the business and create competitive advantage. And these are the types of things like business planning and needs assessment, looking 1 to 3 years out. And so this right here is a simple model, Dan. I mean, the model's simple, but there's a lot of details behind each of these where, and I'll be happy to share an infographic that details a little bit more of these that you could share with the audience if you'd like. But what this does is it gets into, and we highlight in the yellow areas here, where we see the new way of working, forcing organizations to think differently. And I had mentioned earlier, when you've got to start thinking of divergent sources of talent, because cross generations, people are demanding vastly more control and flexibility, and through digitization, anyone can do basically all types of work from anywhere. So this is where we start looking at, deconstructing roles, critical roles you have, into the work components that are made with, or that make up those roles. And when you start thinking about deconstructing critical roles, the roles going forward in your business that are going to make the biggest difference, if you could deconstruct those into the work components that get done, you start thinking about, wow, what are the tactical work components versus the strategic work components? And, for the tactical ones, can we just outsource those? Can we put those over here in this regard? Can I apply the more strategic? Can I put my best people on the more strategic ones? Or for the strategic ones that need to get done, do we have a dearth of talent internally? And where are we going to find that? Going back to the build, borrow, poach, rent, talent piece right over here.
I'm so glad this is in the deck, Kevin, and people I'm sure going to have a lot more questions around this, and we may help facilitate that conversation if you don't mind for those who want to know more. And Martha, one of the things that Kevin said is he talked about talent risk, and I would say a savvy executive today would say talent risk equals business risk. How do you think about this stuff?
Well, to me, a workforce strategy has to be designed around the concept of co-creation and removing traditional silos between departments. One of the concepts that we haven't really talked about yet in this meeting is the concept of product management. And I think about the whole workforce, but for me, it's all about the IT organization. That's where I spend most of my time, and how are we organizing IT to be as effective as possible. And the concept of product management, which I'm sure everybody here is familiar with, we're not focusing on projects, we're not focusing on timelines, we're not focusing on budget, and we're not focusing on deliverables. We're focused on a business outcome or a business capability, and we're putting together cross-functional, nimble teams who are given a business goal not a project, not a solution, but a business goal. And so if I were an HRIT leader, what I would be thinking about, where I would spend some of my strategic thinking time, is how do we design for that? How do we pull down these traditional silos that exist between our departments to create cross-functional co-creation opportunities? What are those titles? What are those reporting structures? What is that accountability? How do we compensate that? If I were an HR to IT leader, I would become a student of how is CarMax organizing to become digital? How did Land O'Lakes reorganize IT so that it's embedded in the business? Because I think that's critical to any digital transformation. I'll just give you a quick example. Atticus Tyson is the CIO of Intuit, and he's created a business outcomes culture in IT where his IT folks are no longer measured on traditional IT metrics, but they're focused, they're bonused and measured against the same business metrics that heads of marketing and P&Ls are going to have. And I'm in the middle of writing a blog with him right now where he's doing a lot of experimentation around organizational design. He is wondering whether the traditional hierarchical structure that we've all known in our companies for many, many years, whether that's really effective anymore. And he's looking at concepts around holacracy and self-organizing teams. And he actually hired some consultants, and they're designing experiments right now on maybe traditional hierarchies are not the way to go. So when we're talking about a mindset shift that we want to drive among our executive colleagues, let's look into our own minds and understand as HR leaders, are we prepared to really shake it up and start thinking about how our companies are structured and managed in a way that is very different from the past. So everything that Kevin talked about in terms of workforce strategy and talent risk, I agree with. But I also think that becoming a student of organizational design and how does that promote innovation and transformation, I think that's a key responsibility of the folks on this line.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Martha, and I might push back only to one thing you said, is that most people are thinking, talking, working on this. I don't think it's the case. I'll be in Silicon Valley next week for the CIO Summit, and the buzz there, 90% of the buzz is around moving to that product management way of thinking and doing business. But outside of that, I'm not hearing it nearly enough, and so thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna forward. We've got like an hour left of material in the next 7 minutes, so we're going to go quickly. So the next slides, 2 slides. I'm not going to take time on this, but I just wanted to have it in your deck, and we can talk offline. This gets down into some more of the grit in terms of some of those skills needed to build that digital muscle in the organization. And again, this is kind of the validation from the industry, and also to help you, the first slide was basically what are the fastest growing, and so what do I need to start working on now to make sure 12 months from now I've got that muscle I need. So I'm not going to spend time on this because we've just got some bigger topics, but I've got some really smart people on my team that would love to talk you through those digital skills if you're interested. I want to get to this next slide around the 7 core capabilities. And Kevin, I want you to just kind of speak to this, and probably a little quicker than you normally do because of time. But we have a lot of strategic thinking HR business partners on the webinar today, and they're looking at how do I raise my game. So can you kind of speak to this? And Martha, I'm going to come back and pick some of these points a little more detail. But what does this mean to you, Kevin, and the people on the phone?
I'm going to do this really quick. It's not going to do it justice, Dan. And this is actually the basis of a very extensive toolkit that my team's putting together right now that we're going to be launching in about a month. And this, at the core of it, we view this. So, clearly the understanding of the business strategy. How does the organization make money, right? Where does the organization need to go? And, this gets back to, where are there opportunities and barriers internally and externally around the business and the HR business partner has got to be vastly more, their business acumen of understanding the business and where it's going and how it makes money needs to be stronger. The assessing talent risk gets back to parts of that model I was sharing earlier, which is what, and I would encourage all organizations to look at. If you're supporting the IT organization, I would be asking the CIO, what are the most critical roles of the in the IT organization going forward? And what are the skills and capabilities required of that? Do your supply and demand analysis. Use the data and analytics to understand where the gap analysis is. Growth management is just our way of changing change management upside down. We're sick of the term change management. I think most people are. We know that we're in a constant flux of uncertainty and things are changing all the time. This is vastly more around understanding where the opportunities to grow the business are, and it's a combination of data-driven insights and the way things are articulated back to the business. Influence, think about this, and we know this from an analytics standpoint. One of the most valuable skills where there's the greatest dearth within organizations is the ability to interpret what data means and articulate it in a way that makes sense to people. And oftentimes, especially from HR will share something back, and it sounds like an HR initiative instead of sounding like, hey, here is a business opportunity or problem. How do we capitalize on it? The mitigate, then the measure and monitor. We have these are chock full of models, but this is all about, okay, now that you have identified it, you've articulated what needs to be done. This is all about putting it into action and then measuring the progress against it and monitoring and course correcting as needed. So that's my best at a high level, Dan.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you short on that because there's so much going on here, Kevin. We'll have to do another webinar just on this slide.
Yeah.
And Martha, as he was talking, I was thinking about a recent meeting with a new CIO, about 18 months in the job, first-time CIO in a billion-dollar organization. And I don't mean the company revenue, I mean his IT budget was $1 billion. And I said to him, I'm like, what's been the biggest surprise so far as a first-time CIO? And he said, I am shocked by how much I need to get done still through influence. He thought, he's got the big job in this big organization. He could just come in and start getting things done, point, go, shoot, click, go. He's like, it's all about influence. What does that mean to you and all the work you do with CIOs?
Sure. So I guess I'll just take a step back, and I'm cognizant of our time here. The industrial economy, I know, Dan, you're getting nervous. When I start with the industrial economy, you think I'm going to take a long time. The industrial economy has been with us since, really the late 18th century. And the digital economy has been with us for like 5 minutes, right? The industrial economy was more assets, more plants, bigger teams, walls between our departments, walls around our company, and using technology to do what we've always done, but do it faster, do it cheaper. With digital, it's fewer assets, smaller organizations, nimble cross-functional teams, and using technology to change our business. That's a dramatically different way of thinking. But the thing about ideology is it's hardwired, and that industrial era mindset is hardwired into all of us. And it's very hard to step out of that and try to change it for ourselves, let alone change it for all the people around us. But that is the job of IT. That's the job of the CIO, is to change the hearts and minds of everybody in the organization, including our customers. Well, I don't care if you're the king of the company and you got 10,000 people reporting to you. You cannot use power and direct reporting relationships to change the way somebody thinks. The way you change the way somebody thinks is through influence. And so it doesn't surprise me that the CIO is saying, wow, it takes a lot of influence to transform this company. That makes good sense to me.
Yeah, great point, and I think a good place for us to. I had questions for you guys around more on the workforce strategy, org design, talent brand, customer centricity. We just didn't have time to get to it, so we might have to come back and do this again sometime if you guys don't mind. So I'm going to hand it to Jess and let her kind of put a big bow on it. Thank you, everybody, so much for participating. Send us questions if you have things that we didn't get to today. And Martha and Kevin, outstanding job. Thank you so much. And we are going to take this odd couple on the road. This is so fun.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Thank you.
And I agree. Well done. Thank you so much for giving us some things to think about. And I do think we should take this on the road. But for everybody who joined today, really appreciate you, and I hope you found the conversation valuable. We're excited about the opportunity to bring HR executives to collaborate, share ideas, and next practices, using Kevin's words, in support of the unique needs of IT. Now, this webinar will be available for replay on the hr2it.com website, so please share it with anyone you think would get value from the conversation. And finally, if you're an HR leader who supports the CIO and the IT leadership team that represents a large, complex organization who's interested in becoming a member of HR2IT, you can either go to our website, hr2it.com, and apply for membership, or feel free to send me an email directly. My contact information is listed on the slide. That's jtaylor@hr2it.com. Again, thank you so much, Dan, for hosting the conversation, and to our panelists, Martha and Kevin, for all of your insights. And with that, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.